Jalen Carter is out here doing the Lord's work. And this is why I say this, because Jalen Carter is currently going to be covering the cost of mental health counseling for Florida youth football team. All right. So this comes after a very, very traumatic event, obviously. If you guys have not heard, there was a shooting between an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old that happened between two individuals, or obviously the two young men. They're part of the same football team. And obviously, there's a lot of layers to this that I want to unpack in this video. But I just want to give a shout out to Jalen Carter, man. You are doing the Lord's work. It's most definitely appreciated. For him to step in and be an advocate during this time is super important, especially when we talk about mental health services, right? Because obviously there's a traumatic event that happened and he's able to step in to try to give some type of resources and or some type of comfort to these young men on the football team. So we're going to roll this clip and I'm going to give you guys a little bit more insight on what's actually going on and what's happening and transpiring.
Well, after a tragic shooting at a Pop Warner football practice, an NFL star and a Popka native is giving back. Jalen Carter, who now plays for the Philadelphia Eagles, donated $5,000 to pay for mental health counseling.
So let me pause real quick. $5,000 might not seem like a lot of money, but when we're talking about mental health services, it can go a very long way. Mental health services can range sometimes, depending on the state you're in, between $100 and $150. So to have $5,000 allocated to that can help a lot of people out. You know, maybe not for a long time, but it's a good start because you know you can think about $5,000 like that's not that's chump change, but $5,000 can go a long way. If you guys ever paid out of pocket for therapy, you know that $5,000 can go a long way. Sometimes, you know, even you guys' premiums when it comes to like mental health services may sometimes at tops with the regular job, if you have insurance through your job, is like $7,500. So think about it in that way. Like $5,000 is almost, you know, individually a year's worth of therapy.
5's Connor Hansen was at the football field for that presentation tonight, and he joins us live from Apopka. So, Connor, Jalen is trying to help kids get through this very tough time.
Yep.
That's right, John, and tough time indeed. You'll remember just over a week ago, kids and their families had to run for cover after an 11-year-old shot two Pop Warner teammates. Now tonight, they...
All right, so look. All right, so here's another layer to this. An 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. So 11-year-old and a 13-year-old, right? So the 11-year-old had the gun, and the 11-year-old is the one that was the aggravator between the two individuals that got shot, which is two 13-year-olds. Now, I know there's a lot of sometimes speculations around like gun safety, gun laws, and things of that nature, which we'll get into, but I wanted to put it into context right now. This is involving an 11-year-old and some 13-year-olds. And then the 11-year-old had the gun. All right, so I'm going to give you guys that context. Didn't want to skip over that because that in itself is a whole nother situation.
Gathered in the same spot to talk about solutions and moving forward. And tonight, Tony Brown, the mother of NFL star Jalen Carter, handed over a $5,000 check to the Pop Warner program. She says it's to provide mental health counseling to everyone affected by that shooting. This is the same field Carter grew up playing on. Families gathered on the bleachers and also heard from the mayor and the state attorney about possible solutions to stop future violence. The mayor focused on stopping bullying and having training for parents, coaches and kids who use the park. And state attorney Andrew Bain urged people to use gun locks to keep kids from using them.
Let me give you guys some insight, especially when we talk about like gun safety, right? Just full transparency. I own firearms myself. I do practice gun safety. I do follow gun laws, and I'm a big component on gun safety. Now, when you have kids in the house, right? When you have kids in the house, and this is just something to consider and think about, you have to one, more than safety, I'll say, because safety is number two. The number one thing is the education around firearms. You know what I mean? You got to have some type of education around firearms. Like, if you have firearms, you have kids in the household, you have to educate your kids on like the firearms. Like you have to educate them on like the do's, the don'ts, safety, all that stuff. Like I feel like even at 11 or 13 years old, there has to have some type of conversation, especially in the society we live in now. Like you have to have some conversations. Now, where the 11-year-old got the gun, I'm just assuming he probably got it from home, could have got it from anywhere. This is the day and age that we live in. But gun, being informed about how to use a gun and the gun, the proper use of, your Second Amendment is super important. Safety, yes. Safety, gun locks, because kids are kids. As a parent, as a guardian, or the adult in the house, you have to have some gun locks. You have to have safes. You have to have a system put in place to ensure that your kids don't access the weapons, right? But education is like huge. Education is huge when you talk about firearms.
Tony Brown says she and her son Jalen hope this problem will bring this program together rather than divide them. Bain played football at the University of Miami and had a very personal story to share.
I, as a mother, was very proud that Jalen got me on the phone and he immediately wanted to help out the children in this community. He was very, very upset to hear about what happened on this field, the same field that he played on, a place where he felt safe. He could escape the stresses of the outside world and just be a kid.
Back on November 7th, 2006, one of my teammates, Brian Patter, was gunned down by another one of my teammates, about 50 yards, less than that, about 20 yards from front of my house, right after practice. Same Revere, same thing. The only reason I wasn't there is because I needed ice on my knee.
Wow.
Eagles donated $5.
This is a huge issue, obviously, in our communities. I was particularly saying the Black community. When you talk about mental health, there's also a lot that's implied when we talk about like self-destructive behaviors, when we talk about sometimes how we treat ourselves in our own communities. A lot of that does have to do with like, how we view ourselves as people, systemically, how we've been treated, sometimes how we treat ourselves is a reflection of like how we've been treated over the years, right? So even when it comes to gun violence, this is very, a huge topic, right? Again, like full transparency, I told you guys I own firearms. I do believe like you can have a weapon or a gun and, practice safety techniques with it. You know what I mean? But when it comes to like our gun violence in our community is at an all-time high. Us utilizing guns to kill each other is at an all-time high. And even just looking at this circumstance and situation, 11-year-old and the 13-year-old, huge issue. You know what I mean? Huge issue. I kind of contribute that to Black culture. Black culture does not glorify our own lives, and I know like there is the mantra, like not the mantra, the mantra of Black Lives Matter, which I agree, but I know that's a whole different story. But we have to treat ourselves a lot better. We have to treat ourselves a lot better, and until we treat ourselves better, we can't expect, any real true change. You know what I mean? We can't expect any true change. Like the gentleman I was talking right here, he witnessed somebody kill somebody else too. Like I've seen, bullets fly through my face, you know what I mean, before. Like I know that whistling sound, what it sounds like when a bullet is passing you. You know what I mean? So understanding the complexity when it comes to like gun safety, especially when it comes to the Black community, especially when it comes to these young men, 11 years old and 13, you know what I mean? Like there's something there, you know what I mean? There's something there that is giving them the okay to do that. You know what I mean? It's something within their psyche, it's something within their mind, something they saw, or something they've heard, because visually, we don't give a good representation to, how we treat ourselves. In our music, it's always, the message is always given that we should kill each other and, promote violence towards each other. You know what I mean? It's glorified for us to kill each other. You know what I mean? It is capitalized on, especially in our music, and our own entertainment for us to kill each other. Um, the violence that we perpetuate to each other is an issue. And I feel like even this situation, when we talk about, the 11-year-old and the 13-year-old, that is a huge issue. You know what I mean? That's a huge issue. And I think as a culture, we have to take a step back and really look at like what can we do better? Like what can we do better so that we're not having 11-year-olds and 13-year-olds, become conflicts and gun violence. Because again, on the mental health standpoint, we talk about, brain development, right? At 11 years old, your brain is not developed all the way. You know what I mean? Your brain is not developed all the way. So sometimes like kids are, obviously kids are like sponges, you know what I mean? So like this is a learned behavior. This is something that was picked up. This was something that was saw. And this is something maybe, again, I'm assuming there's probably maybe some bullying or like something happened where they got into altercation and, was prompting him to do so. You know what I mean? Sometimes in the Black community, especially with Black men, like we see conflict resolution as being some form of violence. Like some form of violence is our conflict resolution, which it shouldn't be. You know what I mean? It should not be our resolution should not be, violence, but demonstrated in this story right here, obviously, it's a huge issue. You know what I mean? It's a huge issue. And again, but I'm glad that Jalen Carter stepped in and he said something about it because, my hopes is through therapy, especially for the young man, particularly the 11-year-old. I hope the 11-year-old gets some type of assistance or help. The 11-year-old is going to be the person that may need that insight on like, okay, that's not how you deal with situations. You know what I mean? That's not how you deal with, your anger, your violence. Like you can use your words, you can communicate, you know what I mean? You can distance yourself, you know what I mean? You don't have to engage in that type of way. You feel me? So let's continue on and then we'll break it down a little bit more.
I, as a mother, was very proud that Jalen got me on the phone and he immediately wanted to help. He played on a place where he felt safe. He could escape the stresses of the outside world and just be a kid.
And Jalen was he played on this field too. So that's another thing to consider is, I'm glad Jalen was able to
another one of my teammates
really get back to, I'm glad Jalen was able to get back to his community because, for somebody to have been part of this process and like know what it is to probably live in that neighborhood. I'm assuming like it may not be the best neighborhood. That can be an assumption that, my part I'm making up. But, if there's gun violence in that capacity and this gentleman right here is experiencing the same situation, then yeah, I think it might be fair to say like, okay, this may not be the best, the best neighborhood to be in. You feel me?
in front of my house right after practice. Same verbatim, same thing. Only reason I wasn't there is because I needed ice on my knee.
And Jalen Carter's mother says this is just the start. They do plan to donate more to help this program get through this tough time. Reporting live in Apopka, Connor Hansen, Fox 35 News.
Well, after traffic.
Good. I'm glad that they're looking to donate more. Again, $5,000 can reach a lot of people. But as I was, and I don't mean to like laugh about it, but I know I make that statement. But I was looking at all the young men behind that were. I was looking at all the young men that were behind his mother that was talking, and I was like, well, $5,000. I was counting just like, okay, like that's like over 10 people. Like that might cover a little bit for a little bit amount of time, So I'm glad that they're going to continue to contribute. I think I was under the assumption that it's just going to be, a few people because they said the people that's impacted, right? So people impacted is not just like the team. It could be like, family members from the team. Like we talk about vicarious trauma. Like you don't have to necessarily have been there or witnessed it, but maybe your son was there. And now you have some, transference because of the situation. Like, okay, well, what if my son ends up being shot, so it's everybody impacted. So now we're talking about a community of people, not just the players, nor are we just talking about, the people that were shot. Most definitely, I hope they get the help that they deserve. Shout out to Jalen Carter for providing those free counseling services. I hope and wish that more athletes will look into doing things like this, especially when it comes to their own communities and the environments they came from. You know what I mean? We can only pay it forward. So I want to end with this. I was listening to a sermon earlier today, and the preacher was talking about, going, like as a kid, he used to go up into the pecan tree and used to go up to the pecans to get pecans. But he wouldn't just go up to the pecan tree. He would climb up the pecan tree. He would shake the tree up and shake it up so that people below him can get the pecans too. Now that was symbolic because sometimes when we get to a certain level in our lives, we do have to shake that pecan tree and make sure that the people that, shoulders we stand on one, the people that are affected and impacted by our success are also, being affected in a positive way as well too, giving back, promoting your community, understanding where the needs are, because it's not about just you, you know what I mean? Like God's put you in a position to give back and God's put you in a position to, shake that tree. You feel me? I appreciate y'all tapping in. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, all the stuff you do on YouTube to help these algorithms do what they do. All right. Again, Terrence the Therapist. Y'all take care. Peace.